on Sunset Review, and please we'll invite the California Architects Board and Landscape Architects Technical Committee to please come forward and make yourselves as comfortable as possible as you can in this room. Thank you for coming this afternoon and being willing to participate. Very good. Whoever would like to begin, and then please identify yourselves as we move along. Thank you.
I am Vice President of the California Architects Board, and wish to also take this opportunity to thank you in advance for our time that we've had with you today. And somewhat apologize by the fact that you're not having a formal lunch because we're here. With me is DJ Taylor, Chairman of the Landscape Architects Technical Committee, also the LATC. Doug McCauley, to my immediate left, our Executive Officer, and Trish Rodriguez, Program Manager of the LATC.
Hey, Trish, thank you.
I am pleased to be able to provide a 4-part overview of the board, and Mr. Taylor will do the similar for LATC. Part 1. What the board does. The board consists of 5 architects and 5 public members. We were established in 1901 and have a rich tradition of programs to protect consumers. We license approximately 20,000 architects, have a budget of $39 million, and 25 dedicated staff. We also have 2 architect consultants in our enforcement program who ensure the cases involving professional practice are thoroughly investigated. As design professionals, we hold a special role as stewards of the built and natural environment. The design profession has many opportunities to prevent minor problems from becoming major problems. The worst scenario, a building failure, which is not acceptable. This is why the board works to aggressively address these issues at the front end. In the board's enforcement program, for example, the means cooperatively working with building departments through a board's first of its kind building official contact program. In addition to consumer education, the board works closely with professional groups to ensure that architects understand changes in laws, codes, and standards. All of these initiatives underscore the board's firm belief that must be by both strategic and aggressive in employing preventive measures necessary to effectively protect the public health, safety, and welfare. To protect Californians and ensure that our buildings perform as they should in our complex practice context, our licensing standards are rigorous but reasonable. The pathway to licensure is comprised of 3 E's: education, experience, and examination. Through education, we require a total of 8 years of experience and/or education. Experience requires licensure candidates to complete a national internship experience program, which requires experience in 17 core areas of practice knowledge. During examination, candidates must pass a 7-division national exam. Finally, in recognition of California's unique seismic energy, accessibility, fire prevention, and legal standards, we administer a California supplemental exam, also known as the CSE, to assess candidates' ability to safely practice in our dynamic California context. One component of our standards that we are particularly proud of is the diversity of pathways into the profession. A professional degree in architecture, a related degree, associate degree, or 5 years of experience can all meet the board's 5-year requirement for education or experience or a combination thereof as a point of eligibility to sit for the architect's exam. The board values and distinguishes itself in the fact that there are a number of ways to attain the knowledge and skills to become a licensed architect in California. Part 2. What's changed since our last review? Computer-based testing of the CEE, immediate release of CEE exam scores, negative budget change proposal due to exam efficiencies of $300,000, repeal of California's comprehensive overlay of the National Intern Development Program, efficient audit system, for continuing education, which requires us no longer to look at 20,000 architect records. Improved enforcement metrics. The average number of days to close investigations improved 46% since last report. Customer satisfaction has increased 42% since our last report, with 80% of our customers either very satisfied or satisfied with the board's service. Part 3. What improvements need and can be made? 1. Constantly improving our consumer protection efforts is paramount. The board is researching tools to make its citations program more effective, as will be discussed by Mr. McCauley. 2. The board is exploring adding an additional architect consultant to our enforcement unit to expand our ability to investigate cases, assess consumers with problems, and assess consumer problems, not consumers with problems, and educate practitioners on how to proactively avoid violations. 3, the board is also looking forward to collaborating with other related boards and to develop new strategies and programs such as a license leverage program, which will also be explained by Mr. McCauley. 4, the national 8-year pathway to licensure takes many candidates as much as 11 years to navigate. The licensure pathway contains complexities, redundant inefficiencies, and dynamics to make the process cumbersome for many. The board is interested in building a much better system. Together with our national association, the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards, we are seeking to promote an integrated program wherein students complete the required national experience, internship program, and prepare for the examinations, all while in the education degree program. Therefore, encouraging an overlapping rather than a sequential approach in the pathway to licensure. The goal is to position students for a successful entry into the profession and promote licensure. Part 4, assistance from Department of Consumer Affairs. The board relies on a variety of services from the department: accounting, budgeting, personnel investigations, public affairs, just to name a few, are important functions that would be difficult for the board to assume. We recognize that the department has made positive strides in a number of areas and looks forward to continuing to work with the department to protect consumers. With that, I will ask Mr. Taylor to provide an overview of the LATC.
Good afternoon. My name is David Taylor. I'm the chair of the Landscape Architects Technical Committee and have been serving on the committee since June of 2008. First, a little bit about what the LATC does. The LATC is responsible for the examination, licensure, and enforcement programs concerning landscape architects within the state. Landscape architects are the design professionals who shape the natural environment for preservation and human use in a manner which protects the public health, safety, and welfare. LATC is a 5-member technical advisory committee of the board consisting entirely of landscape architects. The Board of Landscape Architects, otherwise known as the BLA, was created by the California legislature in 1953, and the LATC was later established in 1997 to replace the BLA. We currently license more than 21% of the nation's landscape architects, approximately 3,500 of more than 16,400 licensed landscape architects in the United States. We have a budget of $1.1 million and a dedicated staff of 5. We also have external contracts with 2 landscape architect consultants for our enforcement program to assist with the technical review of cases involving professional practice issues. To protect Californians, our licensing standards require a total of 6 years of combined experience in education. In addition, candidates must pass a 4-section national exam along with a California supplemental examination to assess candidates' ability to safely practice in our dynamic environment. So some changes since our last review. Like the board, the LATC prides itself on acting proactively and strategically. Since our last review, the LATC has accomplished the following. Number 1, the LATC appointed 2 task forces to address specific issues. The first was the University of California Extension Certificate Program Task Force, which conducted reviews of 2 campus programs and developed improved recommended program guidelines and review procedures. A second task force was appointed to review the Business and Professions Code on the exempt area of practice. Number 2, the LATC has created additional pathways to licensure, allowing credit for an architecture degree, partial completion of a landscape architecture degree, and partial completion of an extension certificate in landscape architecture. Number 3, the LATC now allows early eligibility into certain sections of the national exam upon completion of a landscape architecture degree. Number 4, the LATC developed a workaround system to implement the national exam format and additional pathway changes for candidates during the Department of Consumer Affairs freeze on legacy systems changes due to breeze. Number 5, we've pursued negative budget change proposal due to exam efficiencies, which has netted a savings of $200,000. Number 6, the LATC improved enforcement metrics. That is, the average number of days to close investigations improved 73% since the last report. We've successfully completed May 2014 occupational analysis report and the November 2004 linkage study. And finally, we completed the UC extension program reviews, issuing approvals through 2020 and updated school guidelines and improved review procedures. So that said, what improvements need to be made? The LATC will work with the board to research tools to make the citation program more effective. The LATC is also considering contracting with additional technical experts for efficiencies in our enforcement program. We are interested in working with the board to develop new strategies and programs, which will be discussed further by Mr. McCauley. The LATC would like to expand reciprocal licensure requirements to allow experience to meet education credit for licensees who may not have a landscape architecture or architecture degree. The LATC should work with the Council of Landscape Architectural Registration Boards to develop reciprocity standards for licensees while ensuring the integrity of the license and consumer protection. The LATC will also monitor the board's efforts to promote the integrated program for students to become licensed and will consider whether the initiative could work for the landscape architecture profession. As with regard to assistance from the Department of Consumer Affairs, the LATC is receiving assistance from the DCA to ensure efficient operations. The LATC was recently surveyed by the DCA regarding its pro rata or cost distribution methodology to determine which services were most vital to the program. The LATC utilizes all services, including the Office of Administrative Services, Office of Information Services, Legal Division, and the Office of Professional Examination Services, just to name a few. It is essential that these services continue to be provided by the DCA, which otherwise could not be absorbed by the LATC. I appreciate the opportunity to provide you background and information regarding the LATC. At this time, Mr. McCauley will present the responses to the issues and questions for the board and LATC.
And with that, again, Doug McCauley, Executive Officer, both for the board and LATC. The first issue identified in our background paper was concerning participation in national affairs. And for the board, this is a crucial endeavor for a couple of reasons. One, we actually rely very heavily on our national associations, both for the examination as well as for the internship program, which is managed by the National Council for Architect Registration Boards. And it's actually a very prescriptive online system where the interns actually are tracking their hours in the various practice areas. So to create a parallel or redundant structure just for our board would be horrifically expensive and labor intensive for us. So at the outset, let me say the board does concur with the committee's recommendation on this issue. We agree that it's very important. The board and LATC have had some recent success in getting trips approved to participate nationally. There have been 3 recent out-of-state trips that we were approved for. In addition, 3 recent key national meetings were actually held in California, so we were, of course, able to participate. The approved out-of-state trips for the board were actually funded through our national nonprofit organization, so there was no cost to the state of California, so no state funds were spent. We have not been approved to travel out of state with state funds from within the board's budget since 2010. LATC, conversely, was approved recently to attend the Council for Landscape Architect Registration Board's annual meeting, both in 2009 and 2010. Sending a board member to attend the annual meeting costs a fraction of the board's budget, less than 0.5%. So minuscule investment in something that has tremendous returns for us.
Ironically, we just returned from a national meeting, but it was within California. We were in Long Beach this past weekend. And just to give you a tangible example of what these national meetings are about, it's not just a workshop, it's not just a networking conference. At this event, a resolution was discussed which would have modified the national standards for the NCARB certificate. So this is the portability, reciprocity credential that architects want to have so that they can pursue a job in Nevada or Oregon. The standards for the certificate were proposed to be restricted such that a significant number, over 2,000 of our architects, would not be able to practice in other states. That's a crucial impact on economic development in California. We want to be positioned to export our architectural services rather than having firms from out of state coming here and competing for our jobs. Because the board was able to be there, we were able to oppose it and build a strong coalition for the vote that will take place in June. Had we not been there, not much would have happened. We were literally the only state board that was speaking out on this issue. I should also note that the profession, through the American Institute of Architects California Council and the American Society of Landscape Architects of California, both strongly support the board's ongoing and frequent participation in national affairs. I think that's an important recognition of the value in our participation. They understand that if we're not there, other states, other territories, Guam, Alaska, et cetera, will set the national standards, and we'll simply have to follow them, and they may not be consistent with the needs of our marketplace and for consumer protection. The board does appreciate that the department and administration have been approving trips more regularly, and the board encourages ongoing enhancements in those approvals. So unless there are questions, I'll transition to our next item.
Very good, thank you.
I want to be efficient so you have plenty of time for the engineers board.
Yeah. We have a lot of questions for them. You're absolutely right.
Outstanding. So this one is regarding collection of fines on our citations. Citations, as you may know, those are our only tool that we possess to go after unlicensed practitioners. And unlicensed practitioners, like with Contractors Board before us, they represent the biggest threat to consumers. If you have somebody who's not an architect trying to design something for your home addition that has structural implications, that's just a scenario that we really don't want to be having in our marketplace. So in order for citations to be an effective enforcement tool for us, they need to have real meaning. And for that to take place, there needs to be a painful financial impact on the illegal operators. The way things are structured currently, it's pretty easy for an unlicensed individual to receive a citation from the board for, say, $5,000 and to simply ignore it. If we issue a citation against an architect, if Port Pasquale got a citation, he'd have to satisfy that and make payment before he could renew his license. We don't have that kind of leverage under unlicensed or over unlicensed individuals. One potential tool would be to utilize collection agencies. I know some other boards have been able to do so. In order to utilize that tool and do so effectively, you need the authority to release Social Security numbers to the collection agencies. And I understand that that's a sensitive issue. There are privacy concerns. There could be data security concerns. And we'd certainly need to work through that if that were something the committee authorized us to pursue. Another potential strategy, and we've just begun exploring this as part of our pro rata, it would be an invaluable service for boards if DCA actually had a collections bureau within it. So that way you'd be retaining the data within a public agency. You wouldn't have the same concerns you would with that information being shared with a private collection agency. I should note part of the reason this issue was raised is our rate of collection, our percentage of collection. The board averages about 62% in terms of our collections over the last 3 years, and the other related boards, construction, design, collected about 37%. So we're doing significantly better than our peers, but we want to continue doing better. Another possible idea, if the committee has interest in this, is potentially leveraging other occupational licenses. And what I mean by that is we often see unlicensed activity in the area of the Landscape Architects Practice Act. So you've got an unlicensed individual designing complex projects for commercial applications, for example. We find that those individuals often have a contractor's license, a C-27 landscape contractor's license. So our theory is if you're an illegal operator and you violated the law in terms of our Practice Act, why should you be able to ignore our citation but at the same time enjoy the benefit of a state license from another board. That doesn't quite make sense to us. And hopefully with Breeze, when it's fully rolled out, there would be a way to integrate our data and work collaboratively, easy for me to say, with other boards so that we can effectively use the citation as a tool across the different occupational licensing boards. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
To the issue of continuing education.
Yes.
And it seems that there is a pretty high failure rate of that and in continuing education. And why is it so high?
A couple of things, Mr. Chairman. First, I would point out that, just for background, our failure rate for the 2 years reported, we've only had the audit authority for 2 renewal cycles, was 16% for 1 year and 14% for the other year. We agree that's at first blush, that's a high number. I think our reality is, one, it's a relatively new provision. The requirement for CE in general has only been on the books, I want to say for 5 years. I may not be precise on that. But the audit requirement as well, we've been through that cycle 1.5 times thus far. So it's not something that's fully ingrained into the practitioner's process in terms of record keeping. Another complexity can be multiple CE requirements. Practitioners like Pasquale with larger firms often hold a half dozen licenses, and different states might have different continuing education requirements. In addition, maintaining membership in the American Institute of Architects also requires maintaining CE. So it could be the complexity and overlay of different requirements. My opinion is that we talked about citations, and I'm going to talk about them again in this context. We have just issued our first round of citations based upon the audit system. Once those are finalized and they've been fully adjudicated, we've held the informal conferences that I'm authorized to hold. They've gone to hearing before an administrative law judge. Once those are finalized and practitioners are paying the $1,000 penalty or what have you, and that reality gets out there in the marketplace, then you start achieving the deterrent effect that hopefully will bring up our compliance rates. But I would suspect that those numbers will trend down as time goes on. But
it is something you're going to continue to work on.
We're very aware of it, and we want to continue. Yes, we want to continue working with the profession to assure that the word's out there and compliance continually improves.
Very good, thank you. And Mr. McCauley, you should be careful for what you ask for, wanting DCA to do the collections. Do you know what they'll charge you to collect the money based on the pro rata that you...
I'm sure you'll be talking about that at Monday's hearing.
We will, that's absolutely true. So thank you for that. Other questions? Yes, Senator Wachowski.
Can I follow up on yours, because I was wondering when I was looking at that portion, was it that people didn't have the paperwork, the certification, that they actually had done some of the coursework on this first round, that they were familiar with it, or was it just that they just blew it off?
That's a good question. It's a combination. I could follow up with precise data in our written response from today, but it is exactly as you identified. The way the law reads, if I recall exactly, is the CE has to have been taken within the 2 years prior to the renewal. And so if it's slightly outside of that band, it's a violation we need to take action on. If they took CE that was partially on disabled access, but also partially on exiting, they may not have fulfilled the full 5 years.
And can you tell me a little bit more about the California test? Because I see that Senator Emerson had legislation 6-7 years ago that sort of looked at the national model and made sure that California's test was standardized, or there were more standardized portions, although you would think, like, for instance, California has a greater interest in, for landscaping, drought-resistant,
Sure.
tricks to make sure that you use less water than, let's say, in Minnesota. So could you give me some clarification on that?
Let me be sure I understand the question. So are you asking how we develop the exam and determine the content that needs to be on it, or is it more the methodology for delivering the exam?
No, the content.
Okay, in terms of the content, licensing exams are required to be developed pursuant to 2 different national standards. There are 2 different national associations that have prescriptive standards on the psychometrics behind developing an exam. So with our exam, like others, the process starts with what's called an occupational analysis. So that's when you conduct a study of the profession, a scientific survey, and you determine what is being done, what are the tasks that are done, how often they're done, and how important those tasks are to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. So once you have that body of data, you distill it down into what's called the test plan. And those are the specific knowledge, skills, and ability that you test for on your examination. From there, you actually write what we call the items or the questions that go on your exam. You'll use a panel of subject matter expert architects or landscape architects. And then once those items have been written, you have a separate and distinct panel that reviews them. And you do that to be sure that you don't have the same people reviewing their own work and saying, hey, that's a great question. So you do the review process. From there, you actually construct your exam, where from this body of items that you've written, you choose the 100, 200, whatever, that are the most robust, that mesh with the content areas that are going to work the best. And then from there, you develop your cut score, your passing score, if you will. And then once you've done that, you're essentially ready to roll out your exam.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator. Other questions? See no one. Anything further? I think you've covered everything. So now if we could hear from any professional groups or organizations or individuals who would like to comment. Certainly, you could do that. That'd be fine, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members. Mark Christian with the American Institute of Architects California Council, the professional association of the licensees regulated by the California Architects Board. We are in support of the California Architects Board. We've worked well with them for many, many years. Their priority is very clear, is to protect the consumer. We agree with them on that. We work with them very well. We work with them well when we agree. We work with them well when we happen to disagree in those few times when that would happen. On one specific issue, item number 1, issue 1 on travel restrictions, we completely agree with the staff recommendation that the Architects Board should be able to use their license fees, not tax dollars, licensing fees that are paid by my members when they renew their license, to participate with these national organizations that help develop the national exam and other items are of keen interest to us. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Thank you. My name is John Roshinsky. I'm the current president of the California Council of the American Society of Landscape Architects. I am a licensee in California for the last 25 years. One point that I would like to bring up is that the current structure of the Landscape Architecture Technical Committee under the CAB has been a great model since the mid-90s when it went in. I think it's really important in these discussions to keep in mind that even though we're both design professions, we fall under essentially different licensing structures, or I should say examination structures. And I think it's really important when we're looking at how the CAB and the LATSI currently exist that we look at maintaining that. I think it's really important that the LATSI is serving landscape architects in California in an excellent manner right now, and we really strongly encourage extension of the sunset as it currently is. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is John Nicholas. I'm a landscape architect here in Sacramento, and I'm also representing the California Council of the American Society of Landscape Architects. And ASLA itself is a membership organization of about 15,000 landscape architects nationwide. In California, we have about 1,500 of our 32 or so hundred members who are members of ASLA, so we're a trade association. But we're here also to express our support of the Landscape Architects Technical Committee and the work that it does and the efficiencies that it has produced over the years since its inception in the early 90s. We'd also like to reiterate our support of LATC members and staff being able to participate in these national organizations, because that's truly where standards for our profession are set with regards to examination as well as education. So we're in great support of LATC, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. Further questions at all? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming today and appreciate the comments. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.